This is Randy Sullivan, the host of Bourbon Real Talk. I grew up in a small town and went to a small church where everyone looked and thought like me. Over the years, I've gotten to know and love people from all different walks of life. This has made my world bigger and richer. The secret ingredient in forming those relationships was getting to know people's real stories. That helped me to identify with them, have compassion on them, and eventually develop a real connection with them. We live in a disconnected world today, and I want to do everything in my power to build connections between individuals who may not have attempted friendship otherwise. I've observed this happening in the bourbon community on its own because whiskey naturally brings people together. Bourbon Real Talk hopes to combine the world's new passion for bourbon into an opportunity to bring people together. We will share some whiskey knowledge, some good drams, and some real talk. So sit back, pour a drink, and open your hearts and minds. You might just find yourself feeling more connected to the people in the world around you, all fueled by bourbon. Hello, everybody out there in Bourbon Real Talk land. Very special guest today, Alex Lee from NASA Liquors. Huge down in the Houston area. All of our Houston Bourbon Society peeps that are out there, I'm sure you're familiar with Alex. And we are going to be talking today. We did that podcast not too long ago about the liquor laws associated with producers. But I feel like a lot of us whiskey nerds don't know a lot about what it's like to be a retailer and all of those pressures and things that you have to deal with, all of the different directions you're pulled. So we're going to get into that today. But before we talk about that, we are going to taste one of the single barrel selections that NASA worked on, right?
We did. So this is one that we did last year with the great crew from Houston Bourbon Society. Randy Svetlik in particular chose this one, and we were able to have a panel pick it. And it's also here at 8 Row Flint. They're actually on the sticker also. And it's on the menu of about 7 bars and restaurants right now in Houston.
Nice. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that when you do a barrel from Armagnac, they don't use 53-gallon barrels.
Right. They're actually a lot bigger.
They're like 110, I think.
Right.
And so when you commit to a whole barrel, it's a huge financial commitment, right?
It is. And that was actually one of the concerns that we had with this guy. The yield is right at 360 bottles, which if you break it down, is about 60 cases. And yeah, it was a huge commitment. This was the biggest barrel that we've done in regards to bourbon, rum, anything.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it'd have to be because nobody else uses barrels that large. But yeah, I mean,
we took a risk on it. It was something that when we initially tasted, sorry to sound cliche, but my palate just exploded. And it was something that kind of dumbfoundedly put our finances aside to bring this in. So I'm really glad that we did. It's a really tasty bottle.
I've always had a strong affinity for Armagnacs and Cognacs.
And this is one coming from a bourbon drink. This one that you'll naturally like. There's a lot of crossover flavors, a lot of bourbon, a lot of caramel, a lot of vanillas in it.
I'm getting caramel, vanilla. Right. I do get a little bit of like that raisin.
There is definitely some raisin.
But some leather, too. A little bit more structured flavors, some of those barrel flavors.
To me, it's kind of almost like those sun-made, real sugary raisins in the little red boxes almost is what you're really getting out of it.
Yeah, I like that. All right, let's taste it up. I'm getting a good bit of that raisin, but some cinnamon.
All right.
And a little bit of leather, which I usually get from whiskeys that are aged a little bit longer. And I speculate that has to do with some sort of interaction with, oxygen and space, head space in the barrel over time through evaporation. it's something that I taste sometimes in Dusties. And so I'm guessing that has something to do with time.
Mm-hmm.
But this had a little bit of age on it, right? It was what, 18 years?
So it's going to be 18-year cash strength, I believe, right at 100 and right at, was it not right under 100
yeah.
proof. And you're absolutely right. To me, it tastes like a lot of those old Dusties too, but more specifically, a lot of those older pre-92, 93 National Distiller juices where you're getting tons of crossover flavor between grapes and butterscotch almost.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons.
I see that, butterscotch and grapes, yeah.
That's one of the things that, in my opinion, makes this Armagnac so approachable for bourbon drinkers.
Yeah.
It's a real easy transition, and it's not overly too sweet like a lot of cognacs or a lot of even other categories of brandies as far as Calvados goes that a lot of bourbon drinkers deem as too sweet. So I think this one's a real perfect bridge if you're trying to make the crossover from not only bourbon, but from whiskey in general to brandy. So I'm real glad we were able to nail this down.
Yeah, we were digging through the closet to try and find something that went through a store, because I've had a handful of NASA's picks, but I drank them all because they're always so good. So anyway, so moving past just the information about this particular release. So your family owns NASA Liquor, right?
Right.
Is that the actual name, NASA Liquor?
Yeah, so it was actually, it's always been NASA Liquor for about 30 years now. And my family, we took over back in 2011. And a little backstory about it. And not many really people know this, so you guys were actually one of the first to stumble upon this story. My mother, she had just gotten, laid off at her job. And this, through tragedy, there was a shooting that happened at the shop. The owner passed away. And they just wanted to get rid of the shop. And it was just kind of the perfect opportunity for us to step in, make due diligence of what's happening, kind of commemorate what we've built so far to that family.
Right.
And it's really touched us. Every year we dedicate all of our sales to them. We take care of their family. It's something that keeps us going day in and day out.
Right. Truly still a family-owned business.
Absolutely. Right. So it's creeping up on about 9 years now. I've always been heavily involved. I remember coming home after high school, senior year. That's when my mom picked up the shop, going and helping out. Cashier work, even mopping, cleaning duties. And I got real into it. There was just this sudden peak of inquiries for bourbon that I was like, why are so many people asking me about, and this is real cliche, but it was, and it wasn't as often back then. Hey, can you get me some Pappy VanWinkle? Hey, can you get me this Four Roses small batch limited release? And I was like, hey, no problem. I got you. Now, granted, this was back in 2012.
Right, yeah.
And you've heard stories where this is just all over on the shelves. Yeah. But witnessing it firsthand, 3-4 hours after school every day, it's just something that's kind of funny how things have accelerated and progressed the way it is now.
Right.
So with that being said, I really got into not only bourbon, but the whole, specialized kind of obscure spirits about 4 or 5 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago. So were you in charge of, or were you participating in the purchasing process back then? Back then, as bourbon started to become more rare?
Back then I wasn't. I mean, I was still going to school 8 hours a day from, 8 to 4. So it was something that my mom didn't feel comfortable with me.
Sure, yeah, because you're younger, yeah.
But I would say it started around 3-4 years ago when I really knew what my palate wanted and what I desired, and I kind of took and ran with it. And I kind of want to elaborate on that because even nowadays, if I taste something that I like, if a rep comes through, taste this, and if I like it, I'll bring it in without any regards on if it's going to sell or not. And I think that's just translated on how our selection and how our curation is the way it is. It's what I want to bring in that's well done as far as distillation goes, that are offered by good people. And, last but not least, what I think is just real tasty.
Right.
So that's just kind of the theme of what we have on the shelves.
So that's actually very uncommon. That is not normally how decisions are made in the retail environment. So for anybody who watched my podcast with the Galladay, some of this is going to be recap, but for those of you who didn't watch it, you're not going to understand a lot of what we're talking about if I don't give you this basic understanding. So in the state of Texas, we have a 4-tier system. So the first tier is the producer. When you're talking about distilled spirits, it's the producer. The producer might actually make the whiskey. They might not. They might be a non-distiller producer. They may source, they may blend, but whatever. They're the ones that produce the whiskey. The second tier is generally referred to as the distributor, but I've technically found out from a legal standpoint, if they're distributing, it's beer or wine. If it's spirits, then it's wholesaling. But everyone in the industry uses those terms interchangeably.
Yes.
So it's the distributor. This is Randy Sullivan with the Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team and the host of Bourbon Real Talk. Producing a podcast is time-consuming and expensive, and Bourbon Real Talk wants to maintain its integrity by not promoting products and services that it doesn't believe in. For this reason, I've opted to have my real estate team sponsor this program. The Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team has operated since 2008. We've sold almost 500 homes. We have proprietary programs that make a massive difference to the outcome of our clients, and we service the entire North Texas area. If you live in North Texas and you need to buy or sell a home, please give us a chance to explain how our services could benefit you. We understand that not all of our listeners live in North Texas. We also know that not all real estate agents are created equal. If you need a real estate agent outside of North Texas, the Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team has access to tools to help you find a highly qualified agent in your area. The service is free for you, and we stick around through the end of the process to help you with your transaction, even when we're not your agent. If you have a real estate transaction in your future, please reach out to us at randallsullivanteam.com, Facebook, Instagram, or just give us a call at 214-385-9101. From the distributor's customers are retailers,
Right.
which are liquor stores, and you've got your independent liquor stores like NASA, and then you have your more, chain corporate type stores like, Total Wine and, Specs and the larger stores. And then some liquor stores have what's called a Class B license, and Class B license allows them to operate kind of like a distributor for bars and restaurants. So they are able to sell liquor to bars and restaurants, what they call on-premise accounts. And so that's the structure that anyone
Correct.
that's in the liquor/beer wine industry has to operate in. And he is the third tier. He's the retailer. Their store also has a Class B license, so they do sell to bars and restaurants. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that structure. So do you remember when, as a store, you first started getting denied orders from your distributors that you were used to easily being able to get? What was the first one when you were in charge, right? Because I'm sure that the Pappy started to go away in 2013 and 14 before you had really taken over. What was the first one that you called and they said, nope, we can't ship it? And you were like, what? What are you talking about?
I know exactly what it was. So we've always been a real good client of Four Roses. I think we've done right now, it's 9 private picks. And prior to this exact date, well, not right now, but it was back in 2012. We were trying to order the Four Roses 125th anniversary. We've gotten all of them before. So Marriage 08, 09, 10, 11, that really good 12. And back then they did single barrels too. Limited edition single barrels.
Yeah.
And prior to that, we also had 3 or 4 private picks. So whenever they kind of...
And what year was this?
The Four Roses 125th, I believe, came out in, it's either fall of 2013 or 2012. I believe it's 2013.
Okay. Now keep in mind, in 2013, there were almost 0 independent stores doing private picks with Four Roses.
Yes.
Almost 0.
But we were one of the few that...
I mean, but that's just to point out, like, this is how strong of a relationship that they had with the distributor. And
they had to kind of curb us, a little bit.
And despite all of that,
they told us our limit. And we've never kind of really had a limit with them back then. And that was 6 years ago. And it's gotten increasingly harder year after year, even after maintaining the same relationship.
Right.
So that was kind of the first instance where I was like, okay. Well, and it was evident through our clientele and sales too. We were getting a lot more bourbon clientele inquiries about it. So we knew that distributors were going to leverage that on their end also. I mean, it's a business after the end of the day, of course.
Right.
But yeah, man, that 125th anniversary, we did get our hands on a few, and we're happy with what we've gotten, and we're very grateful. But that was kind of the first instance where we were like, okay, man, things are about to change very quick.
Yeah. So I would like to say to the audience that Alex's family still owns and operates the store. They still do business with all of these distributors and all of these on-premise accounts. They still have relationships with all of the brand reps. And so I'm going to ask some questions that he will have to answer diplomatically and maybe not as directly as you or I would have liked.
Get some water before this.
Because they have to maintain their relationships for business reasons. So I hope everybody can understand that. So you said something that was super interesting. You said that since you guys were getting more inquiries, you knew that distributors were aware that there was an opportunity that they were going to leverage for business purposes, which as a capitalist, I think is amazing. But there is actually a law against certain types of leveraging at the distributor/wholesaler level. They're called inducements, and they're technically illegal. As an independent, are your acquisition costs higher? Do you pay more than, say, a Total Wine who has way more purchasing volume than you do?
It's hard to tell on a level of totality. I think, of course, they're going to always have larger purchasing power. They're always going to get better deals because they're buying our store's worth of mainstream products.
Right.
Where we just don't have the capacity to offer that. I mean, I wish we would, but that is in my experience, and this might be different. I might be totally wrong, but in my experience, products that are being offered from the larger distributors, of course, they will be offered a little bit cheaper prices based off of their quantity, their volume. But then there's also other distributors that have a fixed cost on, they don't care if you're Total Wine or chain store, or if you're an independent, you're always going to get the same margins.
Right.
And I really think that's really admirable on those smaller distributors because they're paying back these, fair trade families that are producing these products and not giant corporations where, they can nickel and dime you on, on pretty much the whole supply chain. So that's why, we love to work well with these smaller distributors, but we understand why we are offered a higher price than chains through these larger distributors.
Right. So the translation of what he diplomatically said is that the bigger stores get to buy their product for cheaper than the smaller stores do in general. And so that might be why when you go into a smaller independent store, the bottle prices are $2, $3, sometimes $5 more than if you went down the street to the huge nameless, faceless chain store. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And you also, there's other operational costs that get spread out. So whenever you run a business, you have your fixed administrative costs they don't change depending on volume, right? So you've got your rent, you have your hourly employees that you have that staff the store. And he made mention that sometimes they're actually short staffed at the store. And so if you ever go into a smaller independent store and the person that you want to ring you up is in the back organizing coolers, don't get mad. They're doing that so they don't have to charge you more money.
Right. And that's what I mean. Like, I didn't get paid an hourly wage at all. I was just there just because I loved it. And because, it's just what I like to do. So
right.
Everything we sell it is pretty much invested back into the business. So, I mean, to be frank, and this is why I think a lot of independents kind of shudder, is because at the end of the day, it's pretty physically demanding, and you really don't get to save any money, and you're just at the point where you want to cash out, for lack of better terms.
Right.
So
yeah.
It's just a revolving door on what you make and what you put back in.
At what point did you decide that you wanted to start to bring in more of the higher end whiskey items? And at what point did you decide you wanted to put your name in the hat for barrel selections?
So I think we'll talk about barrel selections first, because I think that precludes whenever we started bringing in more specialized stuff. Our barrel selection was, so our very first barrel that we did was a Four Roses OBSV 100 proof.
Okay.
You don't see that often anymore. They're usually cask strength now, but back then they offered these 100 proof labels, which is on paper the same thing as the standard single barrel release.
Mm-hmm.
It's a barrel that we got to select and have tailored just for us.
Right.
And we had it, and surprisingly, back then, I mean, a Four Roses barrel, or a barrel of anything, was of high commitment financially.
Sure.
We brought that in, and we were just, all smiles, like, it was like, oh my God, this light just hit. If, not to sound cliche, but if you bring something in, people will come and buy it, especially if it's not readily offered.
Right.
There's always been that demand there, just no one has supplied it. We sold it by today's Four Rose barrel standards. I think it took about 2 months to sell those 150 bottles. In comparison to our Four Roses pick that we did last November, we sold in a day.
Right.
At 130 bottles.
Right.
So that was our first one, and that kind of kicked off all of our other barrel picks. Our next one was that infamous 8-year Smooth Ambler single barrel, barrel 912. That one was a hit also, and it just accelerated onto that. I think right now we are on our 42nd private barrel as of this year. 43 and 44 will be coming next month, and those are going to be 2 rum barrels.
Wow.
Super stoked for that one. But we're just really, really grateful that we have a great group of people that help us pick barrels, and we love all of our customers' palates. That's why currently we're trying to expand our private picks to to the palates of DFW also.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some exciting samples coming to you guys. I don't want to speak too soon because it's still in the works, but there are some stuff coming to the Dallas market.
Even if this doesn't work out, you'll work something else out.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just something that we've always wanted to do. It kind of puts a character to our brand as far as being able to offer specialty bespoke items for us, and it's something that's really fun. Now, in regards to bringing in more specialized products, that's actually really recent.
Okay.
I would say about 2.5, 3 years ago. Now, we started focusing on more specialized stuff in 2016, right after Total Wine opened.
Mm-hmm.
I think their first location was in Baybrook, which is about 3 miles away from us on the other side of 45. And we knew that we were going to get our asses kicked on some mainstream products. So
right. You're not out selling Total Wine
of course,
for Tito's.
And we don't expect to,
right.
and we're not going to, which is the main proponent of us offering more specialized products. So we wanted to offer things. Thank you. We wanted to offer things that
killed it.
We did kill it. It's not the first one I've killed either. So we wanted to bring some things that they would have trouble bringing in, because whenever a large chain like them or Specs want to bring something in, it has to go through a high chain of command. Whereas for an independent like us, if we get presented with
a barrel opportunity,
a sample or something,
whatever. Yeah,
we'll take it and they'll ship it, sometimes the next day. So that's something that we really wanted to leverage because we do know there is a market for that. And, it's, unfortunately with, Texas shipping laws, they don't want to ship from California, from K&L or New York and Astor. So we wanted to be that guy in Houston that can offer those specialty products that the chains don't have.
Right.
So we started going to these small distributors, getting information on what they thought was special, what was real obscure, but in the local area where those products are made are outstanding, but just unknown because of lack of awareness, lack of brand awareness, lack of exposure, etc. So that's why we started focusing on these products, and we haven't turned back at all.
That is awesome. So let's talk about that for a little bit. So distributors, they are the sales reps, theoretically, for the producers. So they come in and they present products to you that they've picked up. You guys learned that if you build it, they will come, right? If you bring in good product, the customers will buy it. And you probably had the staff that were trained enough and savvy enough. Did you all have a tasting license?
We did.
So y'all are able to do tastings in the store where you could get that information out there to that customer to sell products that other people couldn't. And it sounds like that became your strategic advantage against the big guys.
Right. I mean, we didn't even do a lot of tastings. It was just me doing
hustling.
Yeah, just hand selling stuff.
Right.
But that was an interesting thing that you said, and I think this can segue into another topic of discussion. Now, I mean, of course, we still have to sell some of the big guy stuff too. And a lot of distributors, to support a company, let's say nowadays, if you want a barrel of this, you got to support something else on the portfolio. And that's one of the reasons why we have to...
That's an inducement.
I mean, not naming any names. But
not naming any names, but did you hear that? If you want barrel of X for your barrel program, you need to buy this other barrel of this other product that's not selling as well.
That might not be how it is procedurally, but that's just how I conceive that's the way it is.
Very diplomatic, Alex.
And in my opinion, it's just and on the flip side, I understand it too. If a retailer, if I was a producer and a retailer wanted to buy some special stuff that has so much high demand, of course, there's all this other stuff that I want to sell too that, we can structure it in some way. Now, not might be, total legality, proven and whatnot, but that's just the unfortunate circumstances of how the politics in the spirits industry in Texas has become, and it's made it incredibly hard to get some of the things that we've wanted to get in. But with that being said, everyone's trying to do that same thing. Everyone's trying to get that shiny barrel of OWA or shiny barrel of, whatever that'll sell.
Whatever.
Right.
Russell's Pick,
and,
whatever.
There's only, a handful of stores, whether you're grandfathered in or if you have that purchasing power to obtain one of those.
Right.
And that's why we've kind of expanded our product, our barrel product breadth on other things that we think are just exciting. Like we did a 126 proof Venenosa Racia that was just like blue cheese in a bottle. We did just recently with barrel that was a 70-30 Barbados Jamaican mix, cast strength. That's going to come in a couple of weeks that will blow your socks off. That's why we did these guys. So we saw everyone was trying to do the same thing, was trying to get the same stuff. And we just didn't want to be in that pool anymore. So we just kind of, we expanded and I think those are some products that we're able to offer that,
were unique, but
unique in my opinion.
Now, when you take on, did y'all work on the Jack Daniels pick?
We haven't done a JD pick yet.
Okay. So y'all done a Barbados Jamaican rum blend,
mm-hmm.
which is, it's
going to come out really well. That's
crazy. Yeah. If y'all don't know, that's like insane. it's I don't know. That's like
It's like sweet funk will put you on that 70s vibe, I promise.
Yeah, so the Jamaican rum is like funky, and then the Barbados rum it actually can be all over the place, but that's I don't know. That's amazing. So when you do something like that that's not in high demand, and you take on, because your average barrel cost for the store is,
it's just a wide range. It depends on retail price, barrel yield, etc.
Barrel yield, yeah. And that's something that you guys need to understand, is that there are some picks that are hard to do. Like, for instance, balcones. They've switched to I think a 63-gallon wine cask, because they wanted to get the toasted barrels that were made in the other, ISC location that does toasting. And they like the larger cask because it aged a little bit slower in the Texas heat. Well, now you've got a higher bottle yield. So if you want to do a barrel program selection, you've got to be able to move that many more bottles. So for an independent store, it's hard to take on that many bottles of a whiskey that's not in super high demand.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, let's say that, Julian VanWinkle opened up their barrel program again, because they used to do single barrel selections. Oh, yeah. How many would you want? Well, as many as they'll sell you. You'll sell every one of those in 30 seconds.
Oh, you have a line out the door.
You have a line out the door every time, right? But how many, Garrison Brothers picks do you want at once? Well, those are a little bit more difficult to sell. There's not as much backup in demand. So when you do those ones that there's not as much demand, does that get you credibility with the distributor for other picks?
Naturally it does, but the main reason why it doesn't bother me that it doesn't sell out in a day or two is that we're able to offer that special product, months throughout or year long, whereas, whereas competition, they're still stuck on selling the mainstream stuff.
Right.
We can have that product breadth all year long of, let's say, a private barrel or 4 different plantation rum casks. If someone walks in there, it's almost like a bartender's playground. You're going to see all these stuff that you want to work with. Selection is going to be eclectic, months at a time. So that's why we don't really focus on. I mean, of course, it'd be nice to sell everything out in 1 or 2 days. But
there is benefit to having a unique option for your customers.
And to be able to offer that year round is something that I truly believe, sets us apart from some other independents.
So it does get you some credibility. It probably, these single barrel selections get you some credibility when they're trying to decide what they're going to do with their annual allocation of allocated items. But doing a barrel selection can screw up your allocation of regular items, right?
Man, nowadays private barrels are allocated. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, a lot of distillers are capping out how many barrels you can buy now. Not only that, but how many barrels the state gets.
Right.
And that's just the state of bourbon nowadays. Is, I believe. I mean, I think like Four Roses has a quota throughout Texas now and some other states, and it's becoming like that throughout most popular bourbon distilleries too, which is something that we have to take into account for depending on what allocations we want, etc.
Right. Well, and the thing that we can get from this conversation as consumers is that if his store does get awarded an OWA pick, one, he probably had to sell a lot of other products to get it, like Wheatley vodka or, Caribou whiskey,
Fireball,
some other Sazerac owned product. And sometimes a newer sales rep from the distributor will try to use an inducement cross brand. So they may have some crappy vodka that's sitting around the warehouse that they can't move, and it's not even a Sazerac product. And they're like, well, if you want some OWA, then I need you to buy a few cases of this crappy vodka that nobody wants. And if that gets back to the producer, that causes all kinds of ripples in the chain. And all of that stuff. So there are a lot of tripwires to, be aware of in this process. So let's, flashback. Let's first off, how do you guys, because there are some picks that you get that are going to be oversubscribed.
Yes.
Right. And that your highly allocated items that come out November, December timeframe, or you have 100 buyers for every bottle that you're going to get. So how does your store distribute allocated items, and how do you deal with getting the bottles out?
So we don't have a point system based. As many of you know, the past couple of years, we usually have one big lottery that holds probably about 60, I would say somewhere between, no, a little bit less, maybe like half of our yearly allocations, depending on the level of demand. Lately, it's just
so y'all do a lottery, but not for your entire allotment.
It's not really a lottery. It's kind of a raffle with prerequisites to be eligible to participate. So like, for example, the last 2 years, all of our private barrel selects, last year there was 22 bars that had at least 2 or 3 of some of our private selects. So if you go there, you order a pour, take a picture, and then send it to us. That was kind of like
that's how
ticket in, and you can get 22 tickets. You can win 22 times. So we did that the last 2 years, and we think that's a really, really cool idea on not only giving exposure to our barrel picks, but also supporting a lot of these local bars and restaurants that we think are, so badass. And if you're a Houstonian, you should
be going there anyway.
Yeah, you should be going there anyways.
Yeah.
So we did that the past 2 years. I'm not sure what I'm going to do this year yet, but you guys heard it first. We have around like 150 bottles already for our December event. I'm not sure how I want to handle that yet. It still needs a night of drinking and contemplating to get to that point.
I'll provide the alcohol.
Yeah. So that's how we handle some of our allocation. And we have a real, steady mental note of who comes in and supports us, who is just, friendly and nice, and not only there for the specialty stuff. So that might not, we might not have some algorithm that quantifiably determines who gets person, what. Right. It's just, we kind of play by ear. I mean, sometimes I'll be nice and be like, hey, you want these, 3 bottles of blah, 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 or some days I'll be, just be stingy, for lack of a better term. So, I mean, we keep it kind of consistently sporadic.
Right, yeah.
But we always have something big in December that we blow out most of our rare limited stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that must have been a difficult decision for your store. And so I'm a big advocate of rewarding the customers that are engaging in the behavior that the store wants them to engage in, right? So as an example, if you're watching this, I want you to never, ever, ever buy another case of Bud Light or Tito's vodka or any other easily gettable spirit without it being from your local independent liquor store that you hope to get allocated items from at the end of the year. Because here's what we do, as we're whores as whiskey consumers, right? So we will buy anything from anybody who will give us what it is that we want, right? And that's fine. But here's the strategy that I think that independent, and you can verify this, independent stores want you to engage in. So when you go and you buy your regular beer and your vodka and your gin and all of that stuff that can be found anywhere from your local store, you may pay an extra $1 or $2 per item, right? We've already talked about why that is. But that's the cost of supporting your local small business. That helps that store get their volume up with the distributor. That's going to help them be higher up in the line for barrel selections. It's going to be higher up. It's going to get them a larger allocation of allocated items at the end of the year. right? And it's also going to help you. Now, when you go in there, if they offer you an allocated bottle, by all means, take it. You earned it, right? You're a regular customer. You shop there. But don't ever just buy an allocated bottle. Always walk out with a drinker or buy some shitty vodka or light beer or whatever it is that you were going to buy at the grocery store or whatever it was that you were going to go get at Total Wine, because that supports that store. That's how they get more of that thing that you wanted. Now, if your large retailer calls you and says, hey, Randy, I have a bottle of Rock Hill Farms here for you. By all means, go buy it. Mm-hmm. But don't get your shitty vodka while you're there. You go buy that from your local independent that you're trying to support, especially if they participate with your club. Whatever whiskey club that you're involved in, supporting that independent that has a relationship with your whiskey club is going to help the ecosystem, right? Because as Alex said, there's only so many barrels of this, brand's whiskey that are coming to the state. How do those things get apportioned? Sales. That's how they get apportioned. So if your club's able to boost the sales of a liquor store, and it's not just because you may think you're like the shit because you spend, $3,000 a year at a particular independent. But if all you bought was allocated items, you didn't help them. They were going to sell those bottles anyway, right? Now, if every time you go in to pick up one of those allocated items, you also buy a bottle of shitty vodka, well, now you're helping out a little bit, right? So that's what I'm trying to teach Whiskey Club members, is that because of the way that this thing is structured, you have to be specific about how you spend your dollars. If you want more of those items, you want more of that access. And let's face it, when someone comes into your store, they have a completely different experience than they do when they go to Total Wine, right?
Right.
And that's no offense to Total Wine. I have some supporters of the show that are Total Wine employees, and I love you guys. But in general, the employees at Total Wine are not super educated about the products that they're selling. They're not necessarily that passionate, and they are willing to say a line that's been fed to them by the store that as a educated whiskey consumer, we know is untrue, right? Whatever it is, Chestnut Farms and Black Saddle, they are not just like Blanton's. I don't care what they say. They're not just like
Jefferson's Creek.
Right. So, when you go into a NASA, you're going to have a more personalized experience from somebody that has the same passion as you. And that's worth something, I feel like.
And I do want to add something to that too. Not only that you're getting a curated experience tailored just for you, but on a perspective of where you stand as far as sales per particular store. I mean, you might spend, $10,000-$15,000 at Specs in Total Wine and still be near the bottom of the list for allocated stuff.
Right.
Whereas if you were to take that same money, and I'm not saying spend it all on me, but if you were to take that and split it between, 2 or 3 independents, that could,
that makes a difference.
I mean, you're at pretty much the top of the list on 2 or 3 stores. And I usually don't, spill that secret, but I'm sitting here with Randy. I mean, that's something that you really have to look at.
That's what I'm trying to teach, because let's talk about Whiskey Club. So how big of an impact can a whiskey club have on an independent store?
Huge. So in my opinion, so I'm very familiar with, HBS, and the camaraderie that group has is, it might not seem, because everyone, is like shit posting sometimes, but it's actually very, very tight knit.
It's not that bad. If you're not in there, I'm in there. There's an occasional shit post, and it usually gets deleted.
It's still a very, very tight knit, and with Chris, correct me if I'm wrong if you're watching this, but it's approaching 4,000 members. If a barrel is,
it's like 65.
Okay, I haven't checked in a month. Wow. Okay,
you posted today, bro. Okay. For everyone that's just listening, Alex actively participates in HBS. He just doesn't check the member roster.
There was another Alex Lee too on there, so don't be confused.
Okay, but yes, they're I think they're around 6,500 right now.
Okay, so if 6,500, and let's say any given average barrel is only releasing 150 bottles, I really think it's I think any whiskey club is greatly impactful on any independent.
Right.
It can make their week. It can make their month off of just, a barrel sale.
It makes it possible for you to take on barrels that you would have been afraid to take on?
Of course. It mitigates that risk that you would do if you were to go at it alone.
Right.
And I know that is the case for a lot of independents. And we're not gun shy by any means on pulling, going solo.
Clearly not. You bought that damn barrel.
But
that was insane, bro.
Yeah, I know, we killed that.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I love what HBS is doing, showing love to all these independents. It's putting them on the map. It's getting them. And the most important thing that HBS has done, in my opinion, is getting these independents more comfortable with carrying things that they would not otherwise do.
Right.
And in some examples are, how many of these independents would be carrying, Foursquare rum or plantation rum if there wasn't a huge affinity of those products in the group.
Mm-hmm.
And with those independents being localized to members in that society, that's a convenience factor that, well, let me say this, that they're able to provide customers who want the specialty stuff a convenience factor, instead of having to drive, out of the loop to us to get those specialty products, or, anywhere else out of comfortable driving zone, for lack of better terms.
Right.
So that's something that's very admirable on what these whiskey clubs can provide.
Well, and beyond that, so let's say that there is a customer base that you can attract by having a plantation rum or La Encantada or some other obscure barrel selection, right? But if your buy-in cost is, $10,000 to $70,000, and you don't have any guaranteed upfront sales, you have to use that bottle to find all of those people. Most companies don't have enough capital to take on that risk.
Sure.
And you can have the bottle shipped to the distributor and not take the whole allotment when it comes in, but then they're going to be on your ass. It's going to mess up your relationship if you don't sell it fast enough, and they'll ship your bottles to your competitors. And they were supposed to be a single barrel selection. And there's a law that says they're not supposed to go pick it up once they screw it up and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why stores don't do it. So, the whiskey clubs being involved can sometimes take some of that pressure where maybe they don't have to sell every single bottle the day that it comes out. But if you can sell enough that the store's not carrying all of that capital,
right,
now it makes it worth it for them to take on that risk so that they can find those customers that are excited about these unique items.
Well, let me also say this, HBS is such a huge platform on Facebook. It also gives customers who buy that bottle a platform to voice their opinions and to get feedback on that specific barrel product too.
Right.
And that's the influence of social media.
So all you got to do is pick good barrels.
Pick good barrels, and hopefully our followers have million Instagram followers.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But it's I appreciate what the Houston Whiskey Group and all the bourbon groups have done for us too. I'm very grateful for that.
So let's transition quickly to Class B.
Sure.
So how do you find your Class B accounts? Do they come to you? Do you have a rep that goes to them?
No, it's just me, and it's coming back on that same stigma. If you build it, they'll come. So our greatest social media platform is Instagram, and because a lot of the bar managers who's ordering stuff are typically younger than most, retail owners, for lack of a better perspective. So they know how to navigate through social media and get a hold of us. And it's a very personal experience too. I handle all of our Class B accounts, so all their orders still come to my cell phone, and then I reply to them through call or text.
He works for Microsoft, by the way.
Oh yeah. It's
this is not his full-time job.
Yeah, I still work 40, 50 hours a week, but this is, NASA's still my baby, so I'm very hands-on with it.
Right.
Since I'm up here now, I always have to relay those messages to my folks back, and they'll prepare the order, deliver to them on Mondays and Fridays. So it's one of those things where, they're not going to a computer program or something and typing in their order. because we don't even have a website yet.
Right.
They're just sending it to me.
How do you work for Microsoft and y'all don't have a website? Never. We don't need to get into that. All right. So one of the questions that I've had is that I think that the 4-tier system is completely fucked up and inefficient. So let's say that one of your Class B accounts, because you deliver to your Class Bs, right?
Yes.
Right. So you have to have equipment to deliver product.
And it's
right?
usually my dad, after his day job on Friday, he'll go and stop by.
Drops it off. Yeah. So y'all's Class B distribution sounds like it's pretty tailored and custom, but some of the retailers are larger Class B accounts, and they're not just distributing a few products, they're distributing a lot of their products. And one of the issues that you'll have is that, let's say that a brand rep for the producer goes out and meets with the whoever's in charge of the liquor program for some bar, and they convince them to get the product. Well, they have to go to their Class B retailer. The Class B retailer has to go to the distributor has to go to the producer, and that whole process takes a long time. And even if the distributor probably has a product in warehouse, then they can ship it quickly to the retailer. But I've heard a lot of stories about the retailer not being able to afford to ship the order to the on-premise account because their equipment costs money and they have, hourly expenses to send somebody out there. It's not just the dad getting off work and driving it out. And they're like, well, we'll do it when you have a larger order. Right. But if you don't need more of your shitty vodka and you don't need more of this and that, then we're not coming out for just this little bit.
Of course.
And that causes a lot of delays and problems. You can really bust your hump as a producer and get on-premise excited about your product. But by the time they get it, everybody's forgotten about that experience, and they've had 3 more experiences just like it with other products since then. So I'm going to go ahead.
And you're right about that, but I do want to add on another issue to that too. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of the bulk. What I'm about to say is kind of the bulk of our Class B sales to bars. Let's say they want something niche and special. Mm-hmm. In order to go to the big guys, sometimes they have to order it, go up to a chain of command, and then sometimes, it might get denied, that order. Mm-hmm. But to us, if you want it, I'll bring it in, you'll get it 2 days after. And we've seen that in multiple situations. And we do have a minimum order, and a lot of our Class Bs understand that. But they also understand that if, on a Friday night, if they accidentally forget to order, their well rum from Specs or Goody, they can always count on us to drive up there and give them, 2 bottles or whatever they need to get them through the night.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just that real personal relationship. And, I'm always by my phone too. And so I see all my messages. I'm usually pretty quick to respond. It's just having like your personal booze concierge to get you where you need to be.
So don't let that confuse you as just regular consumers. That's super rare. You can't normally get that from your Class B if you're an on-premise.
Specs has a cutoff at this time.
Right. And minimum order requirements and all that stuff. And then things get lifted off the shipment. And it's an issue. This is Randy Sullivan with RSHST Capital, LLC, and the host of Bourbon Real Talk. Producing a podcast is time-consuming and expensive, and Bourbon Real Talk wants to maintain its integrity by not promoting products or services that it doesn't believe in. For this reason, I have opted to have my funding company sponsor this program. RSHST Capital is the first of its kind funding company that provides pay-at-close funding to home sellers out of their equity. If you have a home to sell, need money for renovations or repairs to maximize your profit, money to stop pending foreclosure or to keep your mortgage current, or cash for really anything, then look into RSHST Capital. This program is simple. We verify that you have equity, approve you for a funding amount, you have access to that cash at practically a moment's notice for only a nominal fee. This program is raising sellers cash after closing by tens of thousands of dollars, stopping foreclosures and changing people's financial future. You pick your real estate agent, your contractor, and have access to actual cash
or contracting expenses with zero upfront cost. This is a nationwide program. So if you have any curiosity about how it works, please look us up at rshstcapital.com, Facebook, or just give us a call at 214-385-9101.
But I'm just grateful to have the support of, of my parents who are there to kind of tell me, because sometimes I'll get a little bit over eager and I'll be like, okay, I want this, this, and this. And they're kind of like, no, let's just
slow down,
take it easy.
down.
But I really think that excitement and that passion that I have for some specialty products is something that I'm grateful to have that hunch and that niche for. And I think that everyone should explore things that are out of their comfort zone. Hey, I mean, like, there's something that you haven't tried on the shelf, but you walk past it and you look at it every time, you pick it up, examine it.
Yeah.
Just
give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Don't reach for that, that same generic bottle of vodka that you've been doing for the past, 2-3 years or whatever.
Try something new.
Right. I mean, I've, on a personal level, like myself, I haven't gotten bored, but I wanted to branch out on new things and new hobbies. That being said, it's not only it's non-booze related, but picking up a new instrument like acoustic guitar now,
right? Yeah,
and or exploring more nature. I've recently got into hiking, so it's just I always try to put myself in danger, not like danger, but
right,
stepping out of my comfort zone at least 2-3 times a week just to flex my creative muscles. And I think that's something that really aids in how I approach the booze industry.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I've been known to say, and I don't think I made this up, humans don't crave success, they crave progress.
I agree.
But to experience progress, you have to try new things. So take it from Alex here. You can go out and get some of those new experiences by stepping out of your comfort zone and trying some new things. So unless you have anything else to share, I think we're going to wrap it up with that.
I think we're all getting ready to go home and go to bed.
Okay. Yeah, it is getting a little bit late. So
thanks, guys, for watching and listening. It's been a pleasure for coming in here and talking to you, Randy.
Yeah. And if people want to get more information about you, where do they find you?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram. It's just NASA Liquor. If you're on, so NASA Liquor's, our Instagram page is more of a kind of hybrid between business and personal. So if you want to see where we travel or what we eat or what we drink, that's kind of what you want to go. Facebook is going to be more of our posts on what we're selling, and so our Instagram is kind of a hybrid of our Facebook and our Twitter. Our Twitter is also where we like to express some of our geeky opinions on booze and on food as well, and travels. And our Twitter handle is just NASA Liquor also.
Nice, nice. Yeah. And if you want to get more information about Bourbon Real Talk, you can check us out at bourbonrealtalk.com. You can check us out at Facebook /Bourbon Real Talk, Instagram /Bourbon Real Talk. On the website, you can fill out a request to be a show guest. You can give show ideas. You can always subscribe on all of the podcast players and on YouTube. And as always, if you woke up this morning and you did not know if anyone loved you, just know that I love you. And I'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk.
Bye, guys.